In a bizarre turn of events, a routine police auction ended up involving stolen goods being sold back to their rightful owners. Police auctions are common, with authorities often selling confiscated or unclaimed property to the public. The idea is to clear out items that have been impounded, such as old vehicles, electronics, and sometimes jewelry. However, what happened in this case raised many questions about the transparency and legality of the auction process. Stolen goods, unbeknownst to the auction house or the buyers, were among the items sold. The shocking twist? Many of these goods were later returned to their original owners, who had lost them in burglaries or thefts long ago. This situation created a lot of chaos, not only for the victims, but also for the police and auction authorities. Many people were outraged that such a thing could happen. Some questioned the integrity of the police department, while others wondered how such a huge mistake was allowed to happen. This auction gone wrong highlighted serious issues with the systems in place for handling stolen property and the way auctions are managed. It raised important concerns about accountability, transparency, and the protections in place for victims of crime. Police auctions are meant to be a simple process. When authorities seize property in the course of their duties, whether through arrests, investigations, or abandoned property, they often have no use for the items. These goods are usually stored for a period of time, in case the rightful owner comes forward to claim them. If no one claims the property, or if the owner cannot be identified, the items are often put up for sale in a public auction. The proceeds from the auction are then used to fund law enforcement activities, making it a common practice for local governments to hold these events. The auction process typically involves listing the items for sale, describing their condition, and setting a price for bidding. Auction houses or companies contracted by the police conduct these events. Buyers are expected to inspect the goods before bidding, with a clear understanding that the items are sold as is and may have legal claims attached. It's important that the police department ensures the goods being auctioned are cleared of any legal issues, meaning they should be free of liens or, in this case, stolen property. If this system functions properly, it benefits everyone involved, from the police to the auction buyers. The role of the police in auctioning seized goods is central to ensuring that the entire process is legal and fair. Once property is seized, the police are responsible for storing and cataloging the items properly. They must keep detailed records of the items, including how and when they were obtained. If the goods are not claimed by their rightful owners within a set time, the police are responsible for determining if the items can be sold. This requires a careful check to ensure the goods are not stolen or involved in any ongoing criminal investigations. However, the police are also expected to conduct thorough investigations to identify any possible ownership issues before auctioning the goods. If stolen property is discovered among the items, it's their duty to trace it back to its owner and return it. In the case of a police auction gone wrong, this crucial step was either missed or overlooked. This raises questions about whether the police were doing their job properly, or if there were lapses in the system. Proper checks and documentation should be in place to prevent stolen items from slipping through the cracks and being sold. The discovery of the stolen goods at the auction came as a shock to everyone involved. Initially, no one suspected that some of the items being sold were stolen. It wasn't until the victims, who had reported their goods missing years ago, recognized their items at the auction that the situation came to light. Some of the items, like expensive electronics, furniture, and jewelry, were instantly identifiable. The victims could hardly believe their eyes when they saw their stolen property on the auction block, being sold to the highest bidder. This discovery raised serious concerns about how the police department and the auction house failed to identify these goods as stolen. Many of the items had been missing for months, even years, and yet they ended up in the auction without any red flags. This situation was not only embarrassing for the police, but also damaging to the trust the public had in their ability to protect and serve. The victims were understandably upset, knowing that their property had been handled so poorly, and that it had been sold without any effort to return it to them first. Police auctions typically feature a wide range of items. Most commonly, they include things like abandoned vehicles, bicycles, electronics, and personal belongings. Sometimes, these goods come from people who have been arrested and had their items confiscated as part of an investigation. In other cases, the items are recovered after being lost or stolen, but are left unclaimed by the original owners. These goods are then auctioned off, often to the general public who may be looking for a bargain. The items sold at these auctions vary in value, but some can be very expensive. Luxury cars, high-end electronics, and designer goods often make their way to the auction block. This is where things can get tricky. If a stolen item like a designer handbag or a high-value watch is sold at auction without being properly vetted, it becomes part of the issue. Buyers may not realize that they're purchasing something that was originally stolen, and the original owners, unaware that their property is being sold, miss out on the opportunity to reclaim their possessions. One of the key reasons that stolen goods ended up at the auction was due to legal loopholes in the system. When property is seized by the police, it must go through a series of legal steps before being sold. This includes an effort to determine the rightful owner of the goods. However, if the police fail to correctly identify or trace the stolen items, they may end up in an auction without the proper checks. In some cases, authorities might not be thorough enough in investigating the provenance of items, and if the stolen property is not flagged, it can slip through the system undetected. Another reason stolen goods can evade detection is that police departments sometimes don't have enough resources or staff to fully investigate each item. If the ownership of the goods can't be immediately verified, or if the goods are considered low priority, they may be sold without much scrutiny. This is where the auction process breaks down. The law is clear that stolen goods should not be sold, but when there are gaps in enforcement or oversight, these items can make their way to the public auction, causing confusion and distress for those affected. After the auction incident, questions arose about who was responsible for the sale of stolen goods. Both the police department and the auction house had clear responsibilities, but it was evident that there were failures on both sides. The police should have conducted proper checks to ensure that none of the goods were stolen or subject to legal disputes. Additionally, the auction house had a duty to verify the legitimacy of the items they were selling. Unfortunately, neither party performed their due diligence, leading to the sale of stolen goods. In the aftermath, investigations revealed multiple flaws in the auction process. The police department had not conducted a thorough enough search to verify the ownership of the goods before they were released for auction. The auction house, too, failed to properly vet the items, relying on the police to provide them with clear documentation. The lack of communication between the two parties, as well as the absence of a robust system for checking the origin of items, ultimately resulted in the public sale of stolen property. This revealed the need for significant reforms in the handling of seized goods. The auctioneer plays a crucial role in ensuring the legitimacy of the items being sold. They are the individuals responsible for overseeing the sale process and ensuring that all legal procedures are followed. In this case, the auctioneer failed to properly vet the goods, leading to the sale of stolen property. Their job is to inspect each item, ask for proof of ownership, and confirm that the goods are free of any legal issues. If they had done this, the stolen items would likely have been identified and removed from the auction. Instead, they trusted the police documentation, which was later found to be incomplete or incorrect. Auctioneers are supposed to work closely with law enforcement to verify that the items they're selling have been properly cleared of any legal issues. This includes checking for any outstanding theft reports or stolen property claims. When these checks aren't done, it opens the door for stolen goods to be sold to the public. In this case, the auctioneer's lack of attention to detail contributed to the problem. Auctioneers must be more diligent and accountable to avoid such incidents in the future. For many of the victims, the discovery that their stolen goods had been sold at auction was both shocking and emotional. Some had lost their items years ago, and the thought of ever getting them back had faded over time. When they saw their possessions being sold, it stirred up feelings of disbelief and anger. Reclaiming their items meant that they could finally put the past behind them, but it also brought back painful memories of the original theft. It was a bittersweet moment for the victims, as they not only had to deal with the emotional toll of the theft, but also the shock of seeing their goods sold without their knowledge. For the police, the situation was equally difficult. They were responsible for returning the goods to their rightful owners and apologizing for their oversight. In some cases, victims had to go through a lengthy process to prove that they were indeed the rightful owners of the goods. This situation highlighted the emotional and logistical complexities of handling stolen property. Victims had to jump through bureaucratic hoops to reclaim what was rightfully theirs, all while dealing with the emotional impact of having their possessions taken from them. It raised questions about how the system could be improved to ensure that stolen goods were returned quickly and without unnecessary delays. After the auction scandal, law enforcement faced serious consequences. There were internal investigations to determine who was at fault, both within the police department and in collaboration with the auction house. Officers who were responsible for overseeing the seized property process were scrutinized for not following proper protocols. There was also a public outcry demanding accountability from the police department. Many people felt that such a mistake could not go unnoticed, and that there needed to be consequences for those involved. These internal investigations led to several changes in how the department handled seized goods. Some officers were reprimanded, and the department underwent a review of its policies and procedures. The consequences went beyond just the officers involved. The department's reputation had taken a hit, and trust in law enforcement was shaken. The scandal served as a reminder of the importance of transparency and accountability within law enforcement agencies. It highlighted the need for better training, more rigorous oversight, and improved systems to ensure that mistakes like this do not happen again. The public reaction to the auction scandal was swift and furious. Many people felt betrayed by the very institutions that were supposed to protect them. How could stolen goods end up being sold to the highest bidder, especially when these goods belonged to victims of crime? Citizens were outraged that law enforcement had not done more to prevent the sale of stolen property. The public's trust in the system was damaged, and there were widespread calls for greater accountability and reform in how police auctions are handled. This scandal also sparked debates about the transparency of police operations and how much the public can rely on law enforcement to act in their best interests. Many questioned the safeguards in place to prevent such mistakes from happening again. Victims, in particular, were vocal about their frustrations. They felt that the police had let them down and had not taken enough steps to recover their stolen property. This outcry forced the police department to respond, issuing apologies and pledging to improve their procedures in the future. The public's anger was a sign that reforms were needed to rebuild the trust that had been lost. Auction houses have a significant responsibility in ensuring that the items they sell are legally clear and free from any disputes. They act as the intermediary between the police and the public, making them responsible for verifying the legitimacy of the items being auctioned. In the case of the stolen goods being sold, the auction house failed to perform due diligence in vetting the items. Their failure to investigate the origins of the property meant that items that should have been flagged as stolen slipped through their checks. This oversight was a major factor in the public auction scandal, and it highlighted serious gaps in the auction house's operational procedures. Auction houses should be more proactive in checking the provenance of the goods they auction. Typically, they rely on the police or other authorities to clear the items, but that doesn't absolve them from responsibility. The auction house must ensure that each item has a clear and documented history before offering it to the public. When stolen goods were inadvertently sold, it showed that a lack of communication between the auction house and the police, as well as a lack of proper checks, can lead to chaos. This situation calls for auction houses to improve their procedures and adopt stricter protocols to ensure that no stolen goods are ever sold to unsuspecting buyers. In today's digital age, technology could have played a significant role in preventing the sale of stolen goods at police auctions. One solution is the implementation of better tracking systems that can identify stolen items before they are auctioned off. For example, using a national database of stolen goods, where police and auction houses can easily check the status of any seized property, would provide an effective safeguard. Modern tools, such as RFID tags or serial number databases, could be used to track items from the moment they are seized until they are either returned to their rightful owners or sold at auction. Additionally, advancements in software that cross-reference auction listings with local and national theft databases could quickly spot items that are flagged as stolen. By integrating this technology, police departments and auction houses could ensure that stolen property doesn't end up on the auction block. In the case of this scandal, the lack of such systems allowed stolen goods to go undetected. This highlights the importance of embracing technology to streamline processes and reduce human error, making it more difficult for such mistakes to occur in the future. Once stolen goods are sold at auction, the legal ramifications can become complex. Victims may have a legal right to reclaim their property, but they often have to go through a lengthy and difficult process to prove that they are the rightful owners. In many cases, the buyer who purchased the stolen goods in good faith may not be liable to return the property immediately, leading to potential legal disputes. The auction house may also face legal consequences for failing to vet the items properly. Law enforcement could face liability for their oversight, especially if it is found that they did not take the necessary steps to prevent the sale of stolen goods. From a legal perspective, the situation becomes more complicated when stolen goods are sold to buyers who have no idea they are purchasing stolen property. In some jurisdictions, buyers can keep the items if they purchased them in good faith, even if the goods were later identified as stolen. This means that victims may be forced to deal with both the police and the auction house, as well as potentially facing a complicated legal battle with the person who bought their stolen property. The legal process for returning stolen goods can vary widely depending on the jurisdiction and the circumstances surrounding the auction, but it often involves significant challenges for all parties involved. After the scandal, many people began calling for reforms in the way police auctions are handled. The system, which was designed to clear out unclaimed or seized property and return funds to law enforcement, had serious flaws. To prevent similar mistakes in the future, police departments and auction houses need to implement better procedures for verifying the ownership of items. This might include more stringent vetting processes for auctioned items and a clearer protocol for returning stolen goods to their owners before selling them to the public. Some advocates suggest that police departments could collaborate with technology companies to develop better tracking systems for confiscated goods. One major reform could be the introduction of a national registry of stolen goods that law enforcement agencies can use to cross-reference items before they go up for auction. This would provide a safety net, ensuring that any stolen property identified by the police or auction houses is flagged and removed from the auction. The public also has a right to expect more transparency in the process. By ensuring that police auctions are properly regulated and that stolen goods are handled with the utmost care, future mistakes could be avoided, and public trust in the system could be restored. This would create a more accountable and efficient auction process, benefiting both law enforcement and the public. The auction house involved in the sale of stolen goods faced a serious hit to its credibility. Buyers, who had trusted the auction house to provide legal and legitimate items for sale, were left wondering whether they could rely on the auction process in the future. This scandal damaged the auction house's reputation, leading to a loss of customer trust. Many buyers may hesitate to participate in future auctions, fearing that they could unknowingly purchase stolen property. The auction house may also have to deal with lawsuits from affected buyers or victims who had their goods sold without consent. In order to rebuild its reputation, the auction house would need to take steps to regain public trust. This might include offering apologies to the victims, compensating buyers who were affected by the sale of stolen property, and implementing stricter procedures to prevent such an incident from happening again. The auction house could also work with police departments and other authorities to develop best practices for handling seized goods. Restoring its credibility would require a commitment to transparency, accountability, and ensuring that no stolen goods are ever sold at their auctions again. The police auction scandal serves as a reminder of the importance of accountability, transparency, and due diligence in the handling of seized goods. The case revealed flaws in both the police department's processes and the auction house's practices, leading to the sale of stolen property to unsuspecting buyers. To prevent future mistakes, reforms are needed to ensure that seized goods are properly vetted and that stolen items are identified and returned to their rightful owners before being sold. Technology can play a crucial role in these reforms, offering new ways to track and manage confiscated property. In the end, the auction scandal highlights the need for stronger safeguards and better communication between law enforcement and auction houses. By learning from this incident, both institutions can work together to create a more efficient, fair, and transparent system for dealing with seized property. Victims of crime deserve to have their property returned quickly and without unnecessary complications, and the public needs to feel confident that police auctions are conducted in a lawful and ethical manner. Through these changes, we can ensure that stolen goods are not sold back to the very people who had their belongings taken from them. The police auction scandal quickly gained widespread attention, not only because of the severity of the mistake, but also because of the emotional aspect of it. Victims of theft were outraged when they found out that their stolen goods were being sold back to the public, especially when they were unaware that their property had been seized by the authorities. The media coverage surrounding the incident amplified the anger, with news outlets covering the story extensively. Journalists highlighted the loopholes in the auction process and social media users shared their own experiences or frustrations, further fueling the public's outcry. The media coverage had a huge impact on the way the issue was perceived by the general public. The initial public reaction was one of disbelief and anger. People felt that the police and the auction houses had betrayed their trust by allowing stolen property to be sold without the proper safeguards in place. As the story went viral, more people became aware of the flaws in the system, which led to a call for transparency and reform. Media outlets played a key role in holding those involved accountable and keeping the issue in the public eye, which pressured both the police and auction houses to take immediate corrective actions. The role of the media in exposing these systemic issues underlined how important it is to have an informed public when it comes to matters of public trust and accountability. After the scandal, many people were left questioning whether police auctions could ever be trusted again. The sale of stolen goods to unsuspecting buyers severely undermined the public's confidence in the system. However, this does not mean that police auctions are inherently flawed. In fact, they can serve a valuable purpose when handled correctly. Police auctions are often used to sell unclaimed or seized property, with the proceeds going toward law enforcement or public services. For these auctions to regain trust, the process must be overhauled to ensure full transparency and accountability. This might involve stricter laws governing the auction of seized items, as well as more rigorous screening of property before it is made available for sale. To rebuild trust, auction houses could be required to implement more thorough checks and work more closely with law enforcement agencies. Police could create a more transparent process by ensuring that all seized property is carefully documented and tracked from the moment it is taken into custody until it is sold at auction. Additionally, any auction house involved in selling seized goods should be required to disclose the origin of the items and provide proof that they have been properly vetted. With these reforms in place, police auctions could once again serve as an important tool for clearing unclaimed property while protecting both victims and buyers. Have you ever been to a police auction? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, give it a like, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories like this one.